My name is Philip Jeter, and I need to tell you something before I start this story. I need to tell you that I was not a perfect man. I was not the richest man, not the most exciting man, not the kind of man who walked into a room and rearranged it. I was steady. I was present. I showed up. And for a long time I believed that was enough. I believed that a man who came home every night, fixed what was broken, remembered every birthday, and loved his family without conditions was giving his wife something worth keeping. I was wrong. Or rather, she had decided I was wrong. And I didn't find that out from an argument or a confession or a late-night conversation that went sideways. I found it out on a Tuesday night in my own kitchen, when my 7-year-old daughter climbed into my lap with an iPad pressed to her chest like it was something dangerous, looked up at me with eyes too old for her face and said, "Daddy, I need to show you something. But please don't cry first." Those words. Please don't cry first. My baby girl had been carrying whatever was on that screen for long enough that she had already planned for my pain. She had rehearsed how to hand it to me. 7 years old and she was already protecting me. That thought alone, before I even saw the video, broke something open in my chest. But here is what you need to understand about Crystal, my wife of 12 years, the woman in the yellow sundress I had pointed to at a church fundraiser in 2009 and told my cousin, "That's the woman I'm going to marry." You need to understand what she said to that man on the phone the night I sat in the dark downstairs and heard her voice through the ceiling, laughing in a register I had never heard before, soft and performing, a laugh built for someone else. She said, "He doesn't suspect anything. He never does. That's just Philip. That's just Philip." I have turned those 3 words over in my hands 1,000 times since then. That's just Philip, steady, quiet, invisible Philip, who you can betray in his own bedroom while his daughter is down the hall because he'll never see it coming. Philip, who is so reliably in the background that he doesn't even register as a threat. I want you to remember she said that. Because everything that happens next is the answer to it. "Daddy, I need to show you something. But please don't cry first." Those words. Please don't cry first. My baby girl had been carrying whatever was on that screen long enough that she had already planned for my pain. 7 years old and she was already protecting me. That thought alone, before I even saw the video, broke something open in my chest. But first, you need to understand what Crystal said to that man on the phone the night I sat in the dark downstairs and heard her laughing in a register I had never heard before, soft, careful, built for someone else. She said, "He doesn't suspect anything. He never does. That's just Philip. That's just Philip." I have turned those 3 words over 1,000 times. Remember she said that. Because everything that happens next is the answer to it. My name is Philip Jeter. I grew up in Atlanta's West End, raised by a woman who cleaned office buildings at night and sold sweet potato pies on weekends. She taught me that love was a verb. You showed up. You fixed things. You stayed. I carried that into everything, into my career, into my marriage, into the house in Marietta I paid for brick by brick, into every single morning I woke up and chose my family first. I met Crystal Beaumont at a church fundraiser in 2009. Yellow sundress. That laugh. I told my cousin right then, "That's the woman I'm going to marry." He laughed. I didn't. Because I meant it the way I meant everything. Completely, quietly, without any performance. 12 years of marriage. 1 daughter. Destiny, 7 years old, with my eyes and her mother's smile. From the outside, the Jeter family looked like a blessing. From the inside, I was about to find out we were a house of glass. It was a Tuesday night. I had just finished a 12-hour shift, still in my work shirt, heating up the plate Crystal had left in the microwave. She was already in bed, said she had a headache, when Destiny came padding down the stairs in her pajamas, clutching the iPad to her chest. I opened my arms. "Baby girl, what are you doing up?" She didn't run to me like she usually did. She stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked at me with those old eyes and said quietly, "Please don't cry first." I sat down at the kitchen table. Destiny walked to me slowly, climbed into my lap, held the iPad face down for 1 more second, giving me time to brace, and then she flipped it over and pressed play. I watched for 11 seconds before I stopped breathing. 22 seconds before my hand covered my mouth. 40 seconds, the full clip, and when it ended, the kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. That was my bedroom on that screen. My bed. My wife. And a man I recognized from her company Christmas party, a man who had looked at Crystal that night in a way that had made me feel something I filed away and forgot. I wished I hadn't forgotten it. "Daddy?" I pressed my mouth to the top of Destiny's head and held her there. The first tear came and I couldn't stop it. Upstairs, Crystal was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that 40 seconds of footage had just rearranged the entire future. But here is the thing about grief that nobody tells you. At the bottom of it, if you go all the way through it instead of around it, there is something else waiting. Something cold. Something that knows exactly what to do next. I felt it click on like a light in a dark room. Crystal came downstairs at 7:15 the next morning in her silk robe, phone already in her hand. Philip was at the stove making Destiny's eggs. The scene looked like every other Wednesday morning. Except I didn't say good morning. She poured her coffee. Said, "You were out late." I said, "Oh." She asked if Destiny had given me trouble. I said no. She looked at me then, really looked, and I kept my back to her, my movements even, my shoulders relaxed, performing the version of myself she had always underestimated. "You okay?" she asked. "Yep." I slid Destiny's eggs onto a plate, kissed my daughter on the forehead and went upstairs to shower. What Crystal didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I had spent 2 years before Destiny was born working in corporate compliance and internal investigations. I had dismantled 2 senior executives from the inside out. Patiently. Methodically. Without ever showing my hand. I had left that career because Crystal had gotten pregnant and the hours were brutal and I chose family. I always chose family. That skill had gone dormant for 7 years. Last night it woke up. Anne in the kitchen, Crystal stood holding her coffee, and for a reason she couldn't name or fully form yet, her stomach dropped 3 inches. She looked at Destiny. Destiny looked up from her drawing, looked at her mother, looked back down and said nothing. My daughter already knew something that my wife hadn't figured out yet. The quiet ones are the dangerous ones. I sat in my car in the driveway for 35 minutes. I didn't go to work. I called in family emergency, which was accurate, and then I made a mental list the way my old compliance supervisor had trained me. What do you have? What do you need? What is your next move? I had a 40-second video with metadata. I needed to know how deep it went. And I needed to make a call I'd been avoiding since last night, because something Andre had said 4 months ago was suddenly sharp in my memory. We were playing basketball and he mentioned seeing Crystal at the Prestige building, and he'd looked away half a second too fast. I had filed it and forgotten it like an idiot. I called him. He picked up on the second ring. "Phil. Hey man." The way he said it, too careful, told me everything before he spoke. "Andre. What did you see?" 3 seconds of silence. Then the longest exhale I've ever heard from a grown man. He told me everything. The lobby. The hand on the small of her back. 1 second, familiar, possessive. Raymond Holt, her boss, who drove a black Mercedes and wore $300 cologne and told ambitious women they were the most interesting person in any room. "I'm sorry, brother," Andre said. "I should have told you. I'm so sorry." I said, "I need your work van and 2 site cameras. And I need you silent until I say otherwise." He said, "I'm on my way." I hung up and looked at the house through the windshield. My house. My name on the deed, structured carefully years ago on a lawyer friend's advice in a way Crystal had never read closely enough to understand. She had trusted me to handle it. She always trusted me to handle the things she found boring. That trust was about to cost her everything. That evening I told Crystal I was taking Destiny to Miss Loretta's for a few days. My late mother's oldest friend, warm house, always sweet tea on the stove. Crystal barely looked up from her phone. "Fine," she said. "Don't keep her out past bedtime." I packed Destiny's bag. She watched me with those old eyes and then said quietly, "Are we going somewhere safe?" I crouched down to her level. Held her small face in both hands. "Yes, baby. We're going somewhere safe. And then Daddy has some work to do. When the work is done, everything will be different, but you and me, we are going to be better than fine. You hear me?" She studied me the way she always did, reading the frequency of me. Then she nodded once, slowly, like a tiny judge accepting testimony. "Okay, Daddy. I trust you." I held her for a long time at Miss Loretta's door before I let her go. Then I drove home in the dark with the calm focus of a man who had converted his grief into architecture. For 3 days after that, I was the best husband I had ever been. I brought Crystal coffee. I asked about her day. I said, "Raymond sounds like a tough boss," once casually while washing dishes, and watched her go still for half a second before she said, "Yeah, he pushes everybody hard." I nodded and kept washing dishes. At 5 a.m. each morning I was up and working. Phone records through a legal data broker. 47 calls to Raymond's private cell in 90 days. 11 of them while I was home. 2 while I was in the next room. I documented everything. Time-stamped. Cross-referenced. Airtight. The way I had been trained. The case was building itself around them like a house of glass. They just couldn't see it yet. On the fourth night, Crystal made the mistake that sealed everything. She thought I was asleep. I was downstairs in the dark, reviewing documents, when I heard her voice through the ceiling. Our floors had always been thin, which had always annoyed her and had never mattered to me until right now. She was laughing. That other laugh. Soft. Performed. I heard fragments. He doesn't suspect anything. Those words again, confirming what I already knew about how she saw me. Then, I know. Then the one that hit like a closed fist. After Destiny's school year ends. I set down my laptop very slowly. She wasn't confused. She wasn't in the middle of something she regretted. She had a timeline. A future being constructed that I wasn't in. I sat in the dark and let myself feel the full weight of it, every ounce, because grief you run from ambushes you later. I felt it all the way through. Then I picked up the laptop, opened the spreadsheet and added a new entry. Day 4. Overheard call. Key phrase, after Destiny's school year ends. They have a plan. Accelerate timeline. I underlined the last 2 words. Then I contacted my old colleague Brenda Coates, who now ran a private investigation firm in Buckhead, and I told her I was ready for the next phase. She had a tech partner. He had a device. Passive, untraceable, extracting. And Raymond Holt's office building happened to be mid-renovation. Andre had a van. Andre had a uniform. And nobody looks twice at a contractor. Getting inside Prestige Group took planning. Staying invisible took something I had always been better at than people realized. Being underestimated. I was inside for 19 minutes. I found the server room Brenda had described. I plugged in the extraction device. Passive, silent, built to copy and transmit internal communications from 6 executive accounts over 48 hours to a secure encrypted address. I didn't touch anything else. I didn't speak to anyone who mattered. I was in and out before the second-floor renovation crew took their lunch break. Back in the van, Andre asked, "You good?" I pulled off the work vest. "We'll know in 48 hours. We drove in silence until he said, "Phil, you're the best man I know." I looked out the window. Tell me that again when this is over. What I was hunting for was simple. Men like Raymond Holt never only do one wrong thing. They are systematic. And systematic people leave systematic evidence. I had seen it twice in my compliance career. Executives who ran their corruption the same way they ran everything else, organized and confident and certain that no one was looking hard enough. Raymond had been certain nobody was looking. 43 hours later, Brenda called me at 6 a.m. Her voice had the controlled energy of someone who found what they were looking for and then found something bigger underneath it. "Philip," she said. "You need to come see this." Her conference table in Buckhead was covered in printed documents, organized in labeled folders the way I used to arrange case files in Birmingham. I stood there and read, and what I was reading wasn't just evidence of what Raymond had done to my marriage. It was evidence of what he had been doing to his company, and to women, for 3 years. Shell company. His brother-in-law. Steering contracts. Kickbacks totaling somewhere between $340,000 and $400,000. Hidden inside vendor invoices that would not survive a forensic audit for 30 seconds. The emails were explicit enough to be a confession. And then the part that made me sit down. 3 other women at Prestige Group. Same pattern as Crystal. Identified, flattered, pursued. 2 had quietly resigned. 1 was still there. All 3 had NDAs with financial settlements buried in HR files. Raymond Holt wasn't a man who had made a mistake. He was an institution of predation with an infrastructure built around it. I looked at Brenda. "How do we do this right?" She smiled for the first time. "I already called an attorney. She specializes in corporate fraud and workplace misconduct. She's been waiting for something like this for 2 years." I drove home that afternoon and sat on the porch for a long time. I thought about Crystal, not with anger but with something sadder than anger. She had walked into Raymond Holt's orbit believing he saw something in her that I didn't. She had no idea she was simply next in a sequence. She had traded something real for something practiced. I didn't feel satisfaction thinking about that. I just felt tired and clear and ready. I chose a Saturday. Crystal came home from what she called a work brunch. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she walked in. She saw my wedding ring first. I had placed it in the center of the table where she couldn't miss it. Next to it, a manila folder with her name written in my handwriting. She stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then she opened it. 2 pages. Clean, precise, the way I did everything. Phone records. The authenticated video with metadata. The timeline. The overheard phrase, "After Destiny's school year ends," printed there in black and white so she couldn't doubt what I had heard. Everything documented, cross-referenced, airtight. The last line read, "I have retained legal counsel. You will be contacted regarding divorce proceedings. Please communicate only through my attorney. Philip." Crystal sat down on the kitchen floor. Not a chair. The floor. Her legs simply stopped. She reached for her phone. Called Raymond. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. She kept calling and he kept not answering, and what she didn't know was that Raymond's own attorney had called him that same morning about an impending fraud investigation, and Raymond Holt was in a room with his lawyers saving himself. The way he always had, the way he always would, because men like Raymond save themselves first. The women were always the last to find that out. Crystal sat on my kitchen floor and finally understood what "that's just Philip" had actually meant. It meant she had never known me at all. Raymond Holt had a segment booked on a local Atlanta business morning show. Leadership, corporate culture, the importance of integrity. His PR team told him to honor it. He sat in the green room in his best navy suit, microphone clipped, confident. He didn't know the story had dropped at 9 a.m. Brenda's attorney had delivered the fraud filing to the state AG's office and to 2 investigative journalists the night before. By 9:17 it was the top trending business story in Atlanta. By 9:34, Raymond was live on television discussing accountability while the station's own news desk was preparing a cheer-in with his name on it. Someone in the control room, nobody ever admitted who, switched the studio monitor behind the interview set to the news feed. Raymond finished a sentence about building a culture of integrity, and the host's eyes went to something over his shoulder. Her face changed. The camera caught his face as he turned. Someone filmed it on their phone. That clip, Raymond Holt turning to see his own name on a fraud alert while talking about integrity, was shared 340,000 times in 14 hours. I saw it on my phone in Miss Loretta's living room. Destiny was eating cereal beside me. I turned the screen face down on the table. "Daddy, you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, baby," I said. "Yeah. I'm real good." And I meant it, not with satisfaction, not with cruelty. I meant it the way a man means it when something that has been wrong for a long time has finally been corrected, and the air feels different, and the future feels like something he can actually walk into. 3 weeks after I filed, my phone rang. Diane Beaumont, Crystal's mother. I looked at her name for 4 rings. I thought about every Mother's Day bouquet. Every gutter I cleaned in the fall. Every time I had shown up for a woman who had privately never believed I was enough for her daughter. I answered. She didn't lead with pleasantries. "Philip, I know you don't owe me anything, but I need to say this." I waited. I planted something in my daughter I never should have planted. I made her feel like steady wasn't enough. Like a good man was something to be embarrassed by. I did that, and I'm ashamed of it. And you deserved better from both of us. I sat with that for a long time. I didn't say "you're forgiven," not because I was hard but because it wasn't honest yet. I said, "I appreciate you saying that, Diane." She asked about Destiny. I told her she was strong. "She gets that from you, Philip," Diane said. "She gets it from you." I thanked her and ended the call. Sat by the window. Then I got up and started making dinner because Destiny was coming home from school in an hour and she had asked for my smothered chicken, and some things are simply more important than old wounds. That's what my mother had taught me. You feel what you feel all the way through, and then you get up and you feed your child and you build the next day with your hands. Raymond took a plea: fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, 26 months, company dissolved, reputation gone. Crystal was rebuilding herself in Decatur. I wished her no harm. I thought about her less and less. The house in Stone Mountain had 3 bedrooms, a covered porch with ceiling fans, and a backyard big enough for what Destiny had been asking about for 6 months, a wooden swing. I built it myself on a Saturday in October. Sanded the last edge, tested the weight, stepped back and looked at it in the afternoon light. "Daddy." She came out the back door at a full sprint in her socks, still in her Saturday pajamas, a piece of toast in one hand, and she launched herself onto that swing like it had been there waiting for her whole life. She pumped her legs immediately, going for height, laughing at the motion. "Push me." I walked behind her and pushed, gentle first, then higher, and she screamed with that free, unguarded laughter that lives only in children who feel completely safe. The kind that doesn't know anything about loss. Or maybe the kind that knows everything about it and has decided to laugh anyway. She went higher and said, "Daddy, I can see the whole neighborhood." I said, "Tell me what you see, baby." "Trees. Clouds. The Johnson's dog. And, Daddy, I can see everything." "That's right," I said softly and pushed her again. You always could. And standing there in that October light, with my daughter laughing above me and the new house behind me and the old life finally, fully, in the past, I understood something my mother had tried to tell me when I was young and too stubborn to receive it. She had said, Philip, a man who knows who he is cannot be destroyed. He can be hurt. He can be broken for a season. But he cannot be destroyed. She was right. That's just Philip, steady, quiet, present, unmoved. Yeah, that's me. And we were going to be just fine.